clerk please swear the witness?
Would you raise your right hand, please? Do you solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give in this matter will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
You may proceed.
Sir, my name is Philip Elberg. I represent Lulu Korda in a case that's pending in the Superior Court of New Jersey, Hudson County, in which Ms. Korda makes a variety of allegations, has filed a complaint which makes a variety of allegations against you, your wife, kids, and several other individuals associated with kids concerning the treatment that she received while she was a patient at kids during the period between 1984 and 1997. You've had your deposition taken before, have you not?
Yes, I have.
Just let me review the instructions I know you've received before and frankly that I've provided to you before. If I ask you any question that you don't understand, please let me know so that we can be certain that the question that I'm trying to ask you and the question you're trying to answer are the same question. Do you understand that?
I do.
Because everything is being taken down by the court reporter, it's necessary that your responses be verbal in nature because the court reporter is unable to take down nonverbal responses.
I understand.
You understand that? You understand that your testimony is under oath and has the same force and effect it would have if it was given in a court of law?
I do.
And you understand that portions of this deposition may be read and or shown to the jury at the time of the trial in this case?
I do.
If I will do my best to not interrupt you while you're answering my questions. I would appreciate it if you would do your best not to interrupt me when I ask my questions. In addition, I would ask you only to answer the question that I ask. And if you provide an answer that's not responsive to my question, I'm going to move to strike the answer and probably ask the court reporter to read the question again in an effort to get what I consider to be a responsive answer. Do you understand that?
I do.
You are under oath today and have an obligation to tell the truth. Do you understand that?
Of course I do.
The first, you were the clinical director at Kids of New Jersey?
That is correct. It's actually Kids of North Jersey, Mr. Elberg.
And before that it was Kids of Bergen County?
That's correct. Same corporation with a name change.
And the first general rule of Kids was honesty, was it not?
That's correct.
What was the second general rule of Kids?
Mr. Elberg, I honestly don't remember. It's been almost 3 years since I've looked at any of this material or dealt with any of this material.
The second rule had to do with the common welfare and group strength coming first, did it not?
That's correct.
Well, if the strength of the group came first and honesty came first, what happened when there was a conflict between being honest and keeping the group strong?
I believe honesty should prevail. After all, it was the first rule.
Well, you remember a hearing conducted by Medicaid a couple of years ago before Kids closed in Secaucus?
Yes.
And you were involved in that hearing, were you not?
Yes, I was.
And you were a witness in that hearing, were you not?
That's correct.
And if you lost Medicaid funding in that hearing, the viability of Kids was threatened, was it not?
That's correct.
And in the context of that hearing, did you submit documents to the hearing officer in that case indicating that Scott Harding was an employee of Kids during a period when he was not an employee of Kids?
He was listed as among the personnel. I don't think the issue ever came up whether he was a paid or volunteer employee at the time, Mr. Elberg.
Did you list Scott Harding as an employee when in fact he had a different full-time job?
We listed him on the staff list, not as an employee.
Did you tell him you were listing him as an employee, and did he object to that?
Not that I remember.
And did you list him anyway?
He did not object to that.
Did you list Erica Goodman as a program nurse at a point when she wasn't the program nurse?
We listed her as program nurse on leave.
And did Erica Goodman testify in that case?
I believe she did, although I don't remember for sure.
And did you... I'm sorry, I cut you off.
Although I don't remember for sure.
And did you ask Erica Goodman to testify in that case to things that you knew were not true?
I did not.
Did you ask Erica Goodman to testify that she was the program nurse at a point when she was not the program nurse?
I did not.
I want to ask you questions about why there are no records, or excuse me, why we don't have a clinical file or in connection with Lulu Quarter's treatment at Kids. Did you understand while you were the clinical director at Kids that Kids had an obligation to make a complete medical record covering the period of treatment?
Yes.
What happened to Lulu Quarter's records?
I have no idea. The files have not been under my custody since the second or third week of November 1998. And at that time, her file was still intact in the file, so I have no idea what happened to it.
Well, if we focus on the first week of November 1998, at that point the records were still under your control?
Yes, that's correct.
Is it your testimony that in November of 1998 there was a complete medical record that was intact covering the period of Lulu Quarter's treatment?
To my knowledge, there was, although I did not physically see it. It was not a normal part of my duties to have any direct contact with the files. The clinical staff members, the group staff members, and the intake coordinator, who was also the records manager for the facility, and the program nurse, all had direct involvement with it. But to my knowledge, that file still existed then. Again, it's indirect knowledge.
Did you understand, well, in addition to being the clinical director, would it be fair to describe you as the chief executive officer at Kids?
That's correct.
Okay. While you were functioning in that capacity, did you understand that Kids had an obligation to designate someone as its custodian of records?
Yes, I did.
Okay. Who was the custodian of records?
Sadie Gigante, who was also the intake coordinator.
During what period did Sadie Gigante serve as the custodian of the records?
Mr. Elberg, without having employment files to look at, I don't remember, but it was several years before that date, up to the close of the program.
Who was the custodian of records before Sadie Gigante?
I think it was Shirley Clements, but I'm not entirely sure. There was another lady, Kathy, and I'm losing her last name now, that they were between Pat Hanrahan, who was the longtime program nurse, coordinator of records and intake coordinator, and then there were two other people in between, and then Sadie.
Did you understand that Kids had an obligation to designate as an employee as the coordinator of medical records?
Yes.
And was that Sadie Gigante as well?
Yes.
At the time the state took control of the Kids' records, the representative from the Attorney General's office indicated that there was a receipt in those records for the destruction of many pounds of files. In fact, did Kids in fact destroy substantial numbers of medical records before it closed its doors?
It began sometime before that. There is a law and set of rulings that you are required to retain full files for 7 years after the last date of treatment contact, and there's a caveat that for people that are under 18, you must retain the file until their 18th birthday plus 3 years, which is a window for them to take any possible legal action. And there was a protocol of file destruction because we were frankly practically having to move out of the building for the amount of our records. We had voluminous records. So yes, there was a protocol for destroying records.
Would you